So welcome to our very special edition of Legends, and I'm really pleased today to be joined by Mark Rosenhaus, who has a career of over 37 years as a legendary kitchen designer in New York primarily. So good afternoon to you, Mark.
Good afternoon, Simon. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you
great
for
stuff.
inviting me.
Thank you for attending, because we've got lots to talk about, and I think our listeners would be very keen to understand the differences between the UK market and the US market in terms of the customer expectations, aspirations, and design, of course, which is very important in your camp, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Perfect. So let's start like we always do to ask, what is the Big Apple primarily known for?
New York City is very fast-paced. I'm used to it. I grew up here, but whenever I leave New York to travel around the United States, actually the world as well, it's a lot slower. So, if you don't get it really quick, it's like, I'm out of here. And there's a phrase, in a New York minute, which means that we do a lot of things in a short period of time.
How did you, Mark, get into the kitchen industry, and generally, how do other people obtain their first design position in the States?
For me, I went to architecture school, and then I transferred schools because I wanted more interior architecture instead of like the exterior part. So that's, and you learn in architecture school that they tell you you can design anything from an ashtray to a city, and you narrow things down. And then when I went to the interior architecture school, they said, well, you're going to do everything that's either three-dimensional or two-dimensional, whether you're going to be a painter or a sculptor or an architect of even interiors. And then I got a job in a kitchen showroom, never thinking I was just going to do that. I had more design in me than I just thought. But it became so much more interesting because I was sitting across the table from another couple. Instead of sitting in the back of a big office, either making scale models or drawing doorknobs for a high-rise.
More interactive, yeah.
So
yes.
that was my thing here. For young people, they get into the big box stores, and that's where they usually start.
Right. Okay.
If you're lucky, you get in to be, let's say, an apprentice, or somebody who already has a more private store. Okay, all the better.
Sure.
All the better. It depends on what's in the mindset of the designer. Some people are just basically technicians, and other people are creative designers. And I kind of use that, and I have to watch what I say because everybody thinks they're a designer, but more often people are just plugging in units. And, there's a difference between the person who writes the music and the cover bands that just are in the discos playing.
What I'm trying to find out is, if you're a young person in the States, is there a journey to become a kitchen designer? Or what do most people do? Is it taught in education, or is there an apprenticeship, as we would call it, for kitchen design, or is it about referrals, recommendations, passing by traffic, you see an advert in a showroom window, or how does it work?
I think most people just kind of fall into kitchen design. There are some colleges, the smaller colleges, and out of the way, middle of nowhere, more often than not, although there are a few major colleges that have a kitchen design course.
Right. Okay.
But they're out in the hinterlands, if I can use that expression. And
yes,
maybe they're going to come into the city because they want to see, the big city. People they went to interior decorating school, and I'll call it decorating school, but they'll call it interior design school because years ago, the term was interior decorators, and then interior designers, and then architects. Well, the decorators didn't want to be called decorators. They wanted to be called designers. So that went away. But there were schools that do interior design, and they wind up, I don't know, doing somebody's living room or something, and next thing you know, that they're designing their kitchen, you know, and mostly it's colors and materials.
Right.
And then they hook up with a cabinet maker somewhere along the line, and now all of a sudden not so all of a sudden, they wind up becoming an interior designer, and then they design kitchens.
So there's no formal qualification as such, or is there a formal qualification via the trade association, for example?
Well, yeah, the National Kitchen and Bath Association has their courses or course or certification you can take, which would be
right,
you know, associate, and then a full certified, and then if you're longer in the business, then you get masters. I don't even know. I kind of lost track with all their alphabet soup that they have.
Yeah, because you were a former NKBA, I guess, regional director, that way you would call it, for your area.
I was in the local chapter, the Manhattan chapter. There are about, I think, 60 chapters now across the country, maybe the world. So I was part of it, which was fun. You know, you get in there, you meet people across the country, you're talking across the country. That's always a fun thing to do. And then when you have, years ago, they had many more get-togethers, although there's the Kitchen and Bath Industry Show, which people get together on, which is an excellent show. There's tremendous people there.
In terms of what you do yourself, or have been doing over more than 37 years, kitchen designing. So can you just describe for the listeners the process of how you operate and why you're different to your nearest competitors, if you've got a competitor?
Yeah, I've always got a competitor. When I've been independent, I've been independent for a little over 20 years now. Previously that, I always worked for somebody else. But as an independent, they come into me and they usually say, you know, because it's New York City, more often than not, it's a small kitchen. They say, I need a new kitchen, but I don't know what to do. I said, that's the perfect thing to say.
Right, okay.
And people don't say that so much anymore because there's the internet with all that stuff that's going on, and most of it. Right,
they're all experts, that's it, yes, of course.
Yep. But it used to be that, and, you know, that meant that people had an open mind, which was great because I love open minds. And then I started asking them, you know, some basic questions. When do you want to do this? What style you're looking for? And how did you know about me?
Yeah.
So we talk for a little bit, and then I ask if they've got any basic measurements. And if they do, then that's good. Then I have a visual on what we may be talking about.
Okay, can we move on that great leading? Can we just talk about the you've got a brilliant website, and there's some very creative and very different designs that you can show your clients on your website. But can I talk to you about the golden proportion and the concept behind this that you lead on, please?
That's my favorite subject. I wake up every morning looking and thinking, and I'm not sure if I dream in golden proportions, but maybe I do. It's something I only learned about 20 years ago. I did not learn it in school, which I wish I had, but I hadn't. And actually, you can learn about the golden proportion as soon as you learn how to divide in elementary school. Okay. The golden proportion has several different names. It could be called the golden proportion, golden mean, golden section, golden rectangle, or even sacred geometry. And it's based upon the Fibonacci series, or Fibonacci numbers, or Fibonacci sequence, which is a series of numbers. And I'm going to say them real quick. So if anybody's listening and taking notes, check these numbers out. And you could always look them up too. And the sequence is 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, etc., etc., etc. They work this out to 4,000 numbers. And then when you divide adjacent numbers, you get 62%, plus or minus a small fraction, which is what the golden rectangle is, where the width to the height is a 62% relationship. And it's in the entire universe, from the microscopic to the telescopic. It's in the DNA double helix module. And if it's in our DNA, that's why we like it so much. It's ingrained in us.
Right.
And in the telescopic, it goes up to the spiral of the Milky Way. Even if you look at the back of your hand, you make a fist, you got a spiral right there. And it's in the spiral of the hurricanes. And even in your own body. And here's a simple thing I do with people all the time, because I'm always talking about this first thing with my customers. Just look at your index finger and take your other hand and measure the length of the first digit and compare that to the length of the second digit, and you'll find that it's 62%. The first digit is 62% of the second digit. And then the second digit is 62% of your third digit. And then the first two equal the third. That's the 62% proportion. And you find it in a beautiful face.
So this is about human recognition, and how do you port that into a design of a kitchen?
Yeah. So my boxes and my spacing is all within that 62% relationship as much as I can. Even a length of a handle, if I can do that. And it's so ingrained in us that even a stair step, the height to the tread, is in a 62% relationship. And for you folks in the UK, if you want to see it, Stonehenge is all about those proportions. And then even I looked up 3 churches: the St. Albans Church, the Lincoln Cathedral, and the Salisbury Cathedral. So when you look at these cathedrals, you'll see there's usually a center main entry and then 2 smaller ones to the left and the right. Well, those 2 smaller ones are 62% of the width of the main entrance.
I was a head chorister at St. Albans Cathedral for a few years growing up, and I have to say the place is amazing. So I get what you're saying. Yeah.
These architects knew what they were doing.
Yeah. Within the kitchen, how do sculptures, shapes make a difference in the kitchen as opposed to standard units? What does it give the user?
Well, first off, it's going to be unique, and it's not going to be boring. It's not going to be predictable, and it's not going to be monotonous. And it also has a biophilic relationship, because art and sculpture is really just taking nature and putting it into an object. And then, there's a 3-dimensional quality to it. And because it's what I'm calling art and what my clients are referring to me as an artist, Johnny Gray does individual cabinets. I do a whole unit. The whole wall becomes a piece of sculpture. And in order for it to be a piece of sculpture, it has to be balanced. Otherwise, if it's not balanced, it's not art. And then there are 2 types of balance that I talk about. One is mirror symmetry, which everybody knows. Mirror symmetry, or axial symmetry, which is 2 equal objects equally distant from the fulcrum. And then there's dynamic symmetry, which is more like what an Alexander Calder mobile would be, where you have heavier objects on one side, but lighter ones further away, like on a seesaw. And that becomes very exciting.
Absolutely. So what do I get as the customer or the user that I wouldn't get from boxes? What am I getting in my kitchen? How does it make me feel?
Oh, how does it make you feel? There's a certain excitement that you're going to feel. And even the boxes that I use, sometimes they're a combination of vertical or horizontal. There'll be sliding doors, lift-up doors, flip-up doors.
Nice, yeah.
I'll have circle cutouts instead of just square cutouts. The cutouts for glass are in proportion to the door. It's not just a 2 1/4 inch frame going around. They know they're getting something different. And quite often, they had no idea that I was going to do this, or that they were going to do this. Because they only know boxes.
Right. Okay. So this conversation about designing away from just boxes this could give someone listening in here in the UK, Mark, a potential competitive edge if they're prepared to get into this conversation. So can you offer any advice that would help to open customers' minds to designing away from just standard?
When I first learned about it, I was not as articulate as I am now. And I remember the first client that I was working with, and I was doing something kind of funky, and she was quite into it until all of a sudden it came time to signing the contract, and she says, no, I really can't do this. This is just too far out for me. It was a disappointment, but I understood. Yeah. I think she was more enthralled with my design creativity than really what she could live with in the beginning. So if you look up golden proportion, Fibonacci numbers, and start to understand it, you can get in touch and talk with me about it as well. You'll find that you're going to speak a language that these people may have heard about in some university art history 15 minutes of lecture, and which is what I found out. Because I always ask people if they've heard of the golden proportion Fibonacci numbers, and some people say, "Yeah, I think I have."
No, I can safely confirm that on my travels, I've never had any kitchen retailer mention that they discuss this with their clients at all. So this could give somebody who's interested in finding out more about it an advantage.
Oh gosh, even for their own self-awareness and what goes on, and to go around the world, and let's say you go to Italy and you go to the Trevi Fountain. Okay, yeah, everybody goes to the Trevi Fountain, but if you look at the building behind, you'll see the proportions. It's fantastic. It's the greatest thing that I've ever learned.
You understand what you understand, and you're articulate, as you say, and you very much are, Mark. And so when you're having the conversation with the customer, how do you port that or weave that into when you're discussing sales and you're trying to establish the frustrations with their existing kitchen? How do you give them a solution that interacts with the way you're thinking?
My portfolio, it's probably an advantage because everybody knows it's mine. To the point when I'm designing, they're going to ask me, or actually they say, "I'm going to be in your portfolio, aren't I?" And I say, yes, of course. Even if it's just kind of a basic kitchen, there's always some little detail in the basic kitchen. And my portfolio shows solutions. So, I've been taking pictures of my kitchen since the very beginning. I've always been into photography.
Once designed and accepted, how do you encourage your installers to work with you to create what you've agreed with the customer? Because of course installers will fit the way they sometimes think is right for them, or they'll fit that's right for the design brief and what's been accepted with the customer. So how do you get the installers to follow your journey?
2 installers that I've been working with for many, many years. One fellow especially, he's my age, long-time contractor, and he used to have a larger business, but then as he's getting older, he's winding down, and he loves the thought process, and he helps me figure out things because sometimes, and even my cabinet company, they know it's me, and they virtually reinvent the wheel for me as well. As a matter of fact, years ago they had their color samples of stains on different woods. They knew about my proportion.
Yes.
And they went to all their big dealers with different size blocks. And they said, which one do you want to, use to show? And it had nothing to do with the color. It was the shape of the box, of the block.
If going back to the fitters, if you're probably in the same situation states as we are over here, actually, where there's a big skills gap, where it's reported that there'll be a huge number of installers in the next 10 years that will be retiring, and there doesn't seem to be that many younger people coming into the profession. What kind of learning or apprenticeships is available for somebody who wants to become an installer?
It's more immigrants that are coming in because they've had these building skills because they were probably tradesmen in their home country, so they gravitate towards that. We see it here from several different countries. Maybe start out as day workers, and hopefully they, catch on, and their English improves to the point where they can, start to really do things on their own.
Incredible. I think in due course that's going to change over here in the UK, and I would imagine that will probably already be in progress with the NKB. I don't know whether it is or it isn't, but I would imagine that if there's a skills gap that we have here is the same as the States, that's got to get addressed.
Yeah, there has to be, I think, eventually a swing, because every young person now wants to get into computers in some form.
Right. Okay. It's clean.
Yeah. Like eventually, even in computers, even repairmen for your appliances are probably in short supply. Although they're getting to be more computer oriented, so I guess you have to know something there.
I have some. I'm very fortunate to have some lovely nieces and nephews in the States, and it's the furthest thing from their minds to be designing kitchens, by the way, or even fitting them. But when I go to the States, and I have been when I was a little bit younger, more so, Mark, one of the things I noticed was that there's a big demand, particularly in the South, for very dark woods in the kitchen. The trends for what people would see as being a nice, expensive, or a quality kitchen, let's say. But the further north you go, maybe come up to where you are in New York State, there's more Germanic styles and more glosses and more lighter colours. Would that be a fair appraisal? What do you think the colours and the trends are going to be in your home market now for next year? What's the trends for next year?
Probably the same thing. White's never going to go away. And because where I am, there are a lot of older apartments. Older for the United States is very old. They're 100-year-old apartments. And I know we're little young whippersnappers compared to you guys, but but they're the old wood floors that are down, and there's some molding up at the top, and people want to stay in that genre. So that's where you'll get. That's why you won't see any gloss, because it's just totally, antithetical to the style.
Right, the contrast doesn't work. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. What would you say in your initial pitch is your unique differences apart from golden proportion? What do you give a customer that say other people wouldn't give a customer?
I work independently. I can design anything. I can use any material. I'm not beholden to a catalog. And the cabinet company that I work with, mostly, I have two companies that I mostly work with. One will reinvent the wheel for me, and the other can do probably 90%. We can do things that we never thought of before, and when people catch on to that, that's appealing to them.
So Bespoke is the name of the game. So if you looked at let's look at New York as a whole. So if you had to categorise the retailers, would you say that more than 50% are Bespoke or less than 50% offer Bespoke?
People, Americans, they want variety, and they want to the point where even your stock companies have also another brand, which is their semi-custom. So you can change depths or maybe heights or widths. Sometimes they don't.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think every independent dealer has at least a 100% custom cabinet company. They may not reinvent the wheel, but they will customize anything, and whether they charge for it or not, depending on how custom they are.
Yeah.
And they probably also have, your very stock, so they can have the good, better, best variety.
Okay, so most retailers would have a good selection of people want variety, so there wouldn't be a case where I would go into a retailer and they'd say that the kitchen that we're going to offer you is in set sizes. We would be able to. The answer is we would be able to make some changes or adapt it if you needed that.
And stain,
people have to have that.
Stain colors as well. They will custom stain color. They will custom color, custom paint. You mentioned a name brand paint company, and they will make the same thing.
Yeah.
They charge you a little bit, a small fee for it.
Up, yeah.
Send you a couple of samples to make sure it's what you want.
Given there's so much choice then. And customers, as we mentioned earlier, can do their research on the internet. How do you control the sale?
I take a design fee when we are close to the price, and I always tell people that here's your basic price, and then depending on how the conversation, when I said if you're adding this kind of funky detail or that it could go up in price, and they'll be nodding their head and they understand. So. And then actually, the more we get into design, I kind of lose track of where I'm going with how wild this is. And sometimes all of a sudden I say, I go, when I'm going to come up with the price, I go gulp. We just increased the price by a lot, but I have to justify it.
Right.
And I start to say, we have this and we have that. Years ago, one person said, can we reduce the price? And I said, yeah, we could take out this fancy cabinet here and save you a couple $1,000. She said, no, that's the best part. So,
Right, okay. I guess what you're saying, that if it's done the way you do it, it's their project. It's difficult to say no.
And they're working right along with me. They're seeing, they may not see the hours that I put into it, and the 10 different pieces of paper that I have, because I design with a pencil and not with a computer.
So on the back of all that, if you looked at, say, 5 years ago to where we're designing kitchens today, have you seen order values go up or go down?
I guess they've gone up. They've gone up. And for me personally, because I'm getting more creative as I do this longer. I was going to say as I get older, but I don't want to say that. But
as you get more experience.
Thank you very much. It has to go up because prices are going up. The kitchens are not getting bigger for me. There's still these, what we call a galley kitchen, which are two parallel walls.
Okay, so what would you say? So if you have 100% of kitchen retailers, what percentage would tend to be members of the NKBA for our UK listeners?
Oh, let's say half.
Okay,
that's
interesting.
And I remember when I was more involved with the Manhattan chapter of the NKBA, I was very surprised to hear that, because people would come to our meetings when we used to have meetings years ago, and they weren't members, and it's like, why not? Well, they have an excuse all up and down,
I guess going back to what we said, if you had somebody who fairly new to the industry, my understanding is that the NKB have some signposting or they have their own content for design support and sales training. Would that be correct?
Yes, and if you're new and young and you want to meet people and find out what the kitchen world is about, yes, you should definitely be involved.
So I think we said that a couple of times in this chat. So networking is probably a bigger factor.
Yeah, networking is excellent. I still do it. Some of it just to meet friends, and others to poke my head into a showroom, because that's where we usually have our meetings and get-togethers and even the holiday parties. And that's why these showrooms want to have their parties. They're going to spend some money, and they're going to get sometimes a good number of people to come.
Yeah. Have you seen in your sector anything that's online that a learner could utilise? Where do people go in the States to learn about kitchen design online?
A couple of the kitchen trade magazines will have programs.
All right.
The NKBA has programs. Manufacturers will have programs. So,
Manufacturers,
if you get on the mailing list or emailing list these days, you'll be notified when there's a program.
Have you seen an increase in the amount of content and courses that's available?
Now it's almost everything, which was actually also a bit of a fundraiser for the local chapters, because they would charge for people to come, and you'd have a dinner sometimes, or you'd have at least hors d'oeuvres, and then you'd have a program, and you get your educational credits if you needed it, if you were a certified designer. Now that doesn't happen. Although what's happened is that the manufacturers are now sponsoring the chapters so that they can get their name on the emails that are sent out saying that they're a gold sponsor or a silver sponsor.
Appreciating that you are fundamentally known for, let's say, design, where would somebody learn the sales element of selling a kitchen?
There's at least one or two other organizations that are sales oriented. Right. One's got 4 initials, and I think they switched it around to make it even more confusing. It's like some kitchen and bath buying group. There are a couple of buying groups that'll go that way.
Yeah. Right, yeah. So it is going at great guns, and by the sound of it. So the face-to-face element is almost being replaced. We always ask this question, and I'm more interested, for the listeners' benefit, of an amusing story where we can actually learn off that story. So can you relay your favourite for us?
I've got a few kind of like one-liners, and these are things that I know you've talked about in your sales programs and presentations, and that's always to ask when they want to do the project. And when I was really young, I was just so eager to design. I sat down with the couple right away, and we're designing away. And then all of a sudden in conversation, they said, "So when are you going to do this?" And they said, "Well, we haven't bought the land yet." Give me a break. Give me a break.
It's like buying a horse and having no stable.
There you go. There you go.
Exactly. So I think a kitchen or a bathroom or a bedroom is most definitely an investment. But if you can work with somebody like yourself and create something that's almost, as you said before, unique or a piece of art, that's very special. So Mark, thank you ever so much for the conversation. I think the listeners are going to pick out a lot of good stuff from what we've said today that can help them in their business. I think particularly the golden proportion concept needs a bit of further research for some potentially. But, Mark, great to chat to you, and I hope we can speak again soon.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.